So people talk about Olmecs. How much do people really know about Olmecs from the land of Oman and Levanter? Look how deep into the ground they have to dig to find these colossal heads. Look how deep into the ground they're digging. Olmecs have elongated skulls. People don't know that Olmecs were binding their cranium, but archaeologists also feel that they weren't binding their cranium, but they just have genetics that are out of this world. Genetics that don't have anything to do with the Homo sapien. And so this Olmec is in a meditative position like a Buddha. And notice the slanted eyes. Take heed to those slanted eyes, because slanted eyes are eyes that deal with serpents. And I'm not talking about Olmecs who mix with Chinese, because these Olmecs have elongated skulls and they don't have anything to do with the human that you know of. And so look at these figurines. These figurines were like small statues, like the figurines of the Terracotta Army in the Quang Shi Dynasty, the first emperor of China. And so, why are their skulls elongated like that? Notice their slanted eyes, like the Chinese. That's where you get Z from. Because the Z were in America, but the Z were also in China. And there's an all-white pyramid called the Temple or the Pyramid of Xi'an. Z, it was spelled Xi, but Z also transformed to Xi, HSI, in Chinese. So I want to know how far these Olmecs and their slanted skulls really traveled. Where were they really from? And so you can find this as a practice between a lot of tribes all across the globe, every corner of the earth, from Iraq to Asia to America, where they're binding the skull of a child. But no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about elongated skulls, like where you get the concept of the cone heads in Hollywood. I'm talking about these skulls that don't have nothing to do with humans. Where did they really come from? Because you have people, a part of these tribes, when these archaeologists go and study these skulls, that say that these people were binding their skulls because they wanted to mimic an intelligent race of beings that were once on this earth. And they were not like you. And so I can say anything, but what does science say about Olmecs and cranial deformation? Well, I'm going to tell you. You had teams of archaeologists. One was a man, I think his name was L.A. Marzulli, but they did DNA tests on these skulls, and they found that some of these skulls were not binded, but they were actually genetically bred this way. And so your skull, like a human being or a so-called Homo sapien, is about 1,000 cubic centimeters. This is what they found. But these skulls, no. They're 1,400 cubic centimeters because they needed to be able to house more blood. They needed to be able to control the blood flow. And some of these skulls had holes in the back of their skull. So what you have is an evidence of a people that were doing that they were almost manipulating what you call the human genome. Or in other words, they were doing genetic manipulation thousands and thousands of years ago. So you tell me what this story about human beings and the people that were on this earth is really about. And so some of these Olmecs, they had flat heads, and they were seen everywhere, even as high as Montana. That's why there's a place in Montana called Flathead. Why is it called Flathead? Yeah, because they found some Flathead Skulls. And the Flathead Indian tribes were binding their cranium. So I wonder where they really got it from. Who did they understand this knowledge from? And so this was traveling amongst all the high-ordered royalty in society, like King Tutankhamun, Nefertiti, and the Egyptian pharaohs Akhenaten. And so they never found some of their children, but they did find the tomb of King Tut, and he has a elongated skull. And so these ancient temples, like the pyramids in America, the sun and moon, the pyramid Teotihuacan, I want to know what were the people like in that area. Because the people today can't rebuild those structures. Teotihuacan was called the city of gods. Not the city of man. That's two different things. So like those elongated skulls of King Tut and the Olmecs, I want to know what those people could do. Could they build these temples and these pyramids? What were they really like? Because the story is still untold. And so scientists and archaeologists know things like skulls from a different race. Elongated skulls from Malta. And I want you to pay attention to this phonetic ALTA or ATL, because I'm going to tell you about ATL. But the skulls from Malta might present a different race from that of Homo sapiens. Forgiani says, even the other skulls were examined and presented strange anomalies, and some were more natural and harmonic than the craniums that mostly gain our attention. So here is an Olmec. Yes, and look at this headdress. This headdress looks like the headdresses that they used to wear in Kemet and Temeray in Egypt. And he's positioned in a meditative stand like the Buddhas. And so thousands of years ago, scientists and historians found that they had a transoceanic trade between these people. So I want to know what was really going on, man. What about this story that they don't tell the people? And so people better really truly research the concept of a serpent race. There was an article done by a writer who said that in Malta, the place was called the Serpent Priesthood of Malta. People don't know about Malta. Malta is a part of the St. John's, the Knights of Catholicism, the high orders in politics, the Queen of England, and Nelson Mandela, etc. Very, very important, powerful people named a order called Malta. And in Malta, the reason that it is called Malta, because Malta is a place that houses a lot of ancient historic megalithic and giant stones that don't look like they could have been built by man, more so maybe by gods. And so you better look up the hidden caves in the Mediterranean on the island of Malta. And so, side note, Mediterranean, why is it called the Terranean? Because before there were 7 continents, before the earth suffered all the floods and the cataclysms and the catastrophes, the earth was divided up into 5 continents. This is historic writing that came from ancient peoples. And the 5 continents, one of the names were Veniscandia, Atlantis, Appalachia, and Mediterranean. And so that's where you get the concept of the Mediterranean, because the Mede was the people called the Medes that lived on the continent of Terrania, which is now known as the Mediterranean. And Terrania was the continent that had split up. And so that's why you get words like subterranean, etc., etc. And so this might seem foreign to you, but this is something much of people really don't know. You know, even a lot of conscious people don't know this. And so in Malta, there's caves. And these caves have 7,000 elongated skulls that they found. And so the phenomena of people hiding historically in caves and preserving ancient secrets, artifacts, knowledge, scrolls, I mean, that's something that really truly has to be studied. And so these skulls, when they do these DNA tests, these scientists and archaeologists, you don't know what they know. You don't know if they've told you everything, because the DNA is not the same. It's been proven that the human skull is made up of what you call 3 occipital bones. But these elongated skulls, they do not have 3 occipital bones. They only have 2, so they're not like us. They're not like you. And so I wonder if they were like the serpents. What's this concept of a serpent? And so I know what you're thinking. Well, Eric, you have to study deeper. Serpent is symbolic of many mystical things. No, I understand that school of thinking. I understand that serpent is relative to the kundalini of the 7 chakras and the energy traveling up to your crown, which is to grant you infinite wisdom. I understand that serpent is symbolic and evolved into the letter S because of the curvature form of a serpent snake. I understand about the serpent being a metaphor of the shedding of its skin, which is supposed to show the renewing and the rebirth of life and coming into a different life or enlightenment. I understand that school of thought, but you don't know scientifically what has been made of these things, these skulls. You better believe they're not going to tell you everything. And so the serpents, if you really study this and put in the work, you'll find was relative to Atlantis. And the phonetic that I told you of ATL, it goes very, very deep in society and world civilization. Think about it. They show you this in Hollywood and movies, hidden messages like Superman. What's with Superman? His symbol, that S on his shield, is in the shape of a serpent. Look up the word serpent. Like in the Bible, it says, "Ye be wise as serpents." The serpents, like those Olmec skulls, could have had those people could have had those slanted eyes. They could have had more intelligence than what you and I had. Like you are more intelligent than a monkey, or maybe the serpents were more intelligent than what we were. I'm not talking about a fairy tale. I'm talking about things that I showed you that have been found on this earth. And so look at Superman. They coil his hair up in an S like a snake. And so what are they trying to tell people? Was it beings on this earth that were like supermen? So this is all relative. You better do some studying. You better research and understand the words that you use. Serpent can go back into the Greek and the Latin, pronounced serpens or anguis. You look up the word anguis, you'll see if you add the letter H, it came into English to be pronounced anguish. And anguish and serpens in Latin means a form of rage and terror. Maybe like the serpent people that was on this earth, written in the Bible, who were terrorizing man and woman. So look up the Latin word serpens. You'll see that it relates to Draco or Draco. That's a constellation from up above. And Draco is what became known as Draconian, which were people who had violent laws in the Dark Ages in Europe. And they were going around terrorizing the world, creating bloodshed. They were ordered by and commanded, and they followed the Draconian laws. And that's where you get the concept of Dracula. You know, in the movies where he's drinking your blood and he's doing all sorts of debauchery, things like that. That's Draconian. And Draco is also what Negroes use, a semi-automatic weapon that they use to murder each other. They call it a Draco. So you better know where this stuff really comes from, because it is all relative. And so, as I was saying about the concept of ATL is a phonetic. You have to have studied this. You can't really too much find this in Etemon. It's just something that you have to have studied. But ATL can be found way back in Mesoamerica. ATL was the gods of Ireland. ATL is in the word Atlantis. ATL is also in Atlan. And Atlan is where the Mayans exiled the Aztecs, sent them to an island full of poisonous snakes. Look it up. You find ATL in all the gods in ancient America. Why are they ATL? You got Texocan ATL, you got Patek ATL, you got Toltec ATL, and you got the god of all gods, the Negro god in ancient America, who was called Quetzalcoatl. So I want to know about this stuff, man, because ATL was the chief giant mother god of Atlantis. And that's why you use the word Atlas, because those were the gods of the world. They supported the world. Search on the word ATL and Atlantis. That's where you get Atlanta, like Atlanta, Georgia. The word ATL and the colors associated were symbolically red, white, and black. Now, what's the color of the Atlanta Falcons? And so that's not a coincidence. It's things that people know, the high orders in society that you don't know. Look up the serpent priesthood of Malta. Malta is the high order of the Catholics. And their Maltese cross, it bears the phonetic of ATL. How far back did this stuff really go, man? You know, it's not something that I'm just making up as I go. No, this can be found in language. Go look up the temples in Malta. You'll see that they are in stone. There are inscribed serpents. So this has relativity.